Yes, Archie, it's true. Selling all of your Rolexes for Patek Philippe was a massive mistake. So this video is actually going to be a response video, and I don't really intend to do a slew of response videos. They are, in my opinion, a form of clout chasing. And I don't really want to get in that business where you attack or reach out to the creation of a larger, more established YouTube creator to in turn attract attention to yourself. With this video, that's not my intention at all. My intention is really to speak as a fan and let it be known I am a fan of Archieluxury. And I want this video to be more of how one would write a band that makes an album that's not as good as previous albums. Let's say, for example, if Tool made an album tomorrow and it was a techno album, it would make a lot of fans angry. A lot of those fans would reach out to Tool and say, hey, you made a mistake. Why'd you do that? That's really what this video is like here. I don't do this as a bad faith actor. This is just my way of responding to one of Archie's videos and some of his revelations about his switch from Rolex to Patek Philippe. So before we get started, today's wrist glint is the Seiko Sarbo 33. It's probably the oldest automatic watch that I own. It's a modern day classic. One day I'll get around to doing a review about this watch. Still love it, have no plans on getting rid of it. And in this case, it's actually on the strap for the Seiko Alpinist, which resides on a strap code bracelet. So I took that leather strap and put it on the Seiko Sarbo, and I think it works really well. It's a really good looking watch. Almost as good as the Calatrava. Right, Archie? All right, no more joking. So here's my top 5 reasons why switching from Rolex to Patek Philippe and these specific Patek Philippe's was a massive mistake for the Archieluxury channel and why Archie is not getting the results he expected by making that transition. He went from sports watches to all dress watches. And there's a certain reality most of the industry has accepted, and that's that dress watches are dead. For better or worse, there really is no need for them. We are an informal society. A formal dinner jacket is not going to be as palatable to the majority of people than a more casual sport coat. That's just the way things are right now. And as an example of how the industry has gone in terms of watch wearing, if you think about the pinnacle of formality and the aristocracy and properness, think of the two royal princes, Prince Harry and Prince William. What do they wear for their watches? Do they wear dress watches? No. Pateks? No. Prince William actually wears a 36 millimeter, I think, possibly 38 millimeter Omega Seamaster quartz. It was a gift from his mom. It's the only watch he typically wears. You almost never see him in any other watch. His dad, on the other hand, wears more formal dress watches. But Prince William wears an Omega quartz. I mean, you can't get more sporty or non-luxurious in the eyes of your average collector than a quartz undersized watch by today's standards. And you have his brother, Prince Harry. Prince Harry wears primarily, or has been seen mostly wearing, a Rolex Explorer 2 Polar, which again, relatively large, relatively chunky watch, definitely a sports watch, has no aspirations about being a dress watch. If you have the aristocracy, the younger aristocracy, now pursuing sports watches for regular wear for all occasions, that really is a sign that the dress watch, for the time being, is on the verge of extinction, which makes something like a Calatrava not all that interesting to the majority of the market. Okay, reason number 2 why Archieluxury switching from Rolex to Patek Philippe was a mistake, and that's the audience doesn't care. And this goes back to point 1 in many ways, where the audience largely doesn't care about dress watches, and the audience doesn't really care about Patek because watches at that price point, even highly discounted, are well beyond the goal of your average watch collector. We're talking about Calatravas still costing, $14,000. And for the most part, there's not a huge market of people who are looking for a $14,000 watch. all the major activity we see in watch collecting is largely going on in $10,000 and under. And that includes Rolex. If you notice a lot of all the sports watches on Rolex are all under 10,000. And on the gray market, we're seeing some prices creep up over 10,000, like for the Submariner, no date. But it is the anomaly. For the most part, people are still largely buying watches under $10,000. And a $14,000 Patek, a $14,000 dress Patek, just doesn't excite the audience. No one's going to tune into your YouTube channel and say, "Ooh, I'm so excited to see a Calatrava." You know, there's a niche for that. It certainly acts as filler, but you can't build a state of the collection around that and find that the majority of the audience is going to gravitate towards that and want to see that and be excited about it, because really dress watches are just not that exciting, and most people don't ever envision being able to afford a Patek, and that too makes it not as exciting for the majority of viewers. All right, the number 3 reason why switching from Rolex to Patek Philippe was a mistake for Archieluxury. He has three Calatravas, and I believe 2 World Times. There's not a lot of diversity in wear, style, or experiences with those watches. The Calatravas are, for the most part, largely identical, and the 2 World Times are largely identical. If you're like me as a watch collector, I'm sure most people who have a couple of these pieces, when they come home, they try on different watches. They have watches for dinner, they have watches for hanging out with the kids, they have watches for going to work. And each one of those watches brings something new in terms of an experience every time you put it on your wrist. In my case, when I wear the Seiko Sarbo 33, it presents more of a dress experience for me compared to my Omega or my Tudor or my any other watch that I own. I mean, I've got so many. I mean, I can't even keep count of them, to be honest. But most of my watches are sport watches, and this watch is meant to be the outlier and provide that dress experience. Imagine for a moment if all of my watches looked like this. If they were all variations of a 38 millimeter case with stick indices and a leather strap. Putting one on wouldn't give me a new experience. It would be boring. It would be boring for me as a person who has to wear these things, and it would be boring for the audience because I can't make content with all my watches looking like this. I mean, who wants to see that? And yes, I will do a review of this watch, but it will not be like any other review of any other watches I've done prior. It's not going to resemble an Omega. It's not going to resemble a Tudor. It's just not going to resemble the Rolex. It's going to be something new onto itself. And I think you're going to get bored as a collector if all of your watches are largely the same model with, maybe slight differences, some older, some younger, but in the same family of watches. And they're all dress watches. That's just not going to be exciting for anyone. That doesn't bring any new experiences. When you show that collection off, let's say you have a picture on the screen of all your watches, no one gets excited to see that because it's all just too similar. The experiences aren't different enough to excite the viewer and the owner. And this is a reason why we're seeing Archieluxury starting to do videos saying that he made a big mistake and how collections he's had in the past were a lot better and more exciting. And I absolutely agree with him. For reason number 4, why Archieluxury switching from Rolex to Patek Philippe and why that was a bad idea, we need to be honest about the aesthetic of these Patek Philippes. And outside of some of the sportier watches by Patek, and they don't really do a plethora of sporty models, outside of those, something like the Calatrava isn't really all that distinctive in terms of appearance. Now, if you recall, Archie made a video when he was somewhere, I forget where, and he came across some kid that had a Timex on his wrist, and he made a quip about how that Timex looked like his Patek, and he's absolutely right. And that's really part of the issue I have with Patek and why I really don't have an interest in most of their watches. It's just, they're not that interesting to look at. So if I were to take my Sarbo and hold it next to a Calatrava and step back 20 feet, They look pretty similar, unfortunately. I mean, this is a $300 watch. The Calatrava is God knows how much. I mean, a ton of money. And there's, in my view, there shouldn't be any confusion between the two. There should be something about the watch that distinctively stands out visually to the eye. Example, not much looks like a Daytona. There are certainly homages that look like a Daytona, but nothing looks like a Daytona. If you're on a plane walking down an aisle and someone has a Daytona, you know it's a Daytona. If someone's wearing a Submariner or a Rolex Explorer 2 Polar, these things visually catch the eye because there's a characteristic about the aesthetic that immediately differentiates it from anything else out there on the market. You really can't say the same about a Calatrava. Is it a good looking watch? Sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess if you dig into it, there's some nuance about it that makes it distinctive to someone who is aware. But come on, let's be honest. Archie himself said that his watch looked like something like a Timex. When you talk about competitors, well, specifically Archie, and he's talking about the Rat 1 and Rat 2 and how rodent number 1 was getting a certain number of Rolexes and he felt the need to grow beyond that. It was a big mistake because you don't grow really above Rolex in terms of larger market perception. That is your ceiling. And it's also a little bit of a misconception. The one upsmanship comes from being passionate about the watch. When you're passionate about the watch, that shines through to the audience. You'll notice everyone who has a Seiko Sarbo 33 raves about it. Glowing reviews, wonderful videos on YouTube. There is a plethora of people who've covered this watch, and universally it's praised. It's $300, right? People are passionate about this watch. That shines through. That attracts people who will also want to buy this watch and get some either purchase validation after acquisition or research leading up to acquisition. But the desire, the love, the feeling for that watch shines through. In the same way, if you have a girlfriend you really, really are into, and that just shows, it's written all over your face and your body language and the way you look at her, it's the same way with watches. That is the true one-upsmanship that you have as a YouTube reviewer to convey to your audience. Just saying, I've got 3 Patek Calatravas because I can, that is not passion or romance or love. That's, in some ways, maybe showing off, but showing off in the wrong way. It's kind of like the guy that shows up with a Corvette and everyone thinks it's just obnoxious in an old man car. I would say forget one-upsmanship, forget the rodent 1, the rodent 2, whatever you're calling them, whatever cute pet names you have for your guru competitors. Follow your passion because your passion will shine through and your audience will appreciate that.